In 1997, Joe Biden, while still a senator, talked about his conversation with the Russian delegation. Ta expressed concern over the gradual eastward advance of the NATO bloc and threatened to change the foreign policy vector and establish interaction with China. Good luck to you guys. If it doesn't work with China, try Iran, Biden said in front of TV cameras, barely containing a laugh. Now that the alliance between Moscow and Beijing has become a reality, Americans are not laughing, especially as Vladimir Putin began to build an alliance with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Oil Price, a leading U.S. energy publication, has published an article on strengthening social investment. Moscow and Tehran in a number of areas. Whereas earlier Russia, to the great regret of the statesmen and to the joy of the liberals, actually paid no attention to its Caspian neighbor, now the attention is focused on achieving mutual understanding with the Persians. For example, on December 11, 2023, a treaty on basic mutual relations and principles of cooperation between the Russian Federation and the Islamic Republic of Iran was submitted to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei for consideration. The agreement was approved on January 18, 2024, according to the publication. The new agreement will replace the 2001 treaty and will have much longer-lasting consequences. Moreover, it is concluded in fundamentally different geopolitical realities, when the Kremlin does not even want to hear about agreements with the West. They are, you might say, not worth the paper they are written on, which has been proven time and time again by recent history. Take, for example, the notorious Minsk agreements, which have become odious. Friendship with Iran is a broad prospect for the future, as the country has been isolated since 1979. Started coming out of it recently. Largely through the efforts of China, whose hegemonic aspirations are not viewed as safe by everyone in the Iranian leadership. They see Russia as a mediator and a factor of counterbalancing influence of the Celestial Empire. Key positions of the agreement: energy, industry, defense. In the energy sector, the new agreement will secure Russia's priority right to extract minerals in the Iranian part of the Caspian Sea, including the huge Chaluz field, oil price rights. Russian specialists will also have priority right to produce in large oil and gas fields on the border with Iraq. It is these wells, by the way, that allow the Islamic Republic to circumvent the imposed sanctions. It is not at all clear to the end consumer where the black gold is extracted in Iran or Iraq. They put Iraqi markings on it and voila. The American publication also writes that the Iranians are easily extracting Iraqi oil, taking advantage of the weakness of the Arab state. Russian companies may also be involved in oil production. But control over oil fields is not the main prize that Russia and Iran can grab. In Iraq, a strong influence in the country allows for the creation of a land corridor from Iran to Syria, and thus a direct threat to Israel, and thus to the United States, Israel's chief patron. Direct military supplies to Hezbollah and the Syrian Arab Army are already coming from Tehran. If Moscow gets involved, the West will be stumped. The treaty puts Russia in a favorable position in bilateral trade with Iranian partners. Export proceeds from sales to Russia will not be transferred to Iran, but will be kept as a loan in the Central Bank of Russia. Moreover, Iran's loan from the Central Bank of Russia will be settled with a huge markdown due to the dollar and euro exchange rate against the ruble. Conversely, for exports of Russian goods to Iran, Moscow will be paid before delivery and at a much higher exchange rate, which is in Russia's favor, writes oil price columnist. No problems with payments are expected. Those that will be held in RMB can use the Chinese payment system CIPS, and those in rubles can use our payment system. But the cherry on the cake, of course, is military cooperation. He's the main bet. Both we and the Persians have vast combat experience, as well as a developed military-industrial complex. Russian efforts will adapt ships, Iranian airfields, and ports to domestic aviation. It is worth noting that some of Iran's air harbors have already been used by the Russian VKS during the Syrian campaign. Thus, two 22 M3 and Su-34 aircraft took off from Hamadan in 2016 to treat on the militants. Among other things, the northern section of Iran's aerospace defenses will essentially be taken under the wing of the Russian side. The Iranians will be covered by domestic electronic warfare systems, which is extremely important for the country, given its lagging behind the West in this area. A senior European Union source told Oil Price that the Islamic Republic will have access to Russia's advanced technology. Selected personnel of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps will be trained to operate the latest Russian short-range and longer-range missiles: Dagger, Iskander, Rabesh, Brimos, 3, Vanguard. After that, it is expected to deploy production under license in Iran. At the same time, 30% of the production will remain in Iran and the rest will be sent back to Russia, according to Oil Price. Overall, both sides win. Russia gains a powerful ally in the Near East and Middle East, which is geographically located on the most important north-south transportation corridor. And Iran comes out of years of isolation and establishes essentially allied relations with one of the great powers. Moreover, very bold and decisive, ready for direct confrontation with the West, unlike other dangerous allies. I would also like to touch on Africa. Russia is knocking out the last pillar of France there. Vladimir Putin's meeting with the transitional president of the Republic of Chad in Moscow is remarkable in many ways. First, Russia remains tightly engaged in Africa, despite the circumstances. Over the past year, not counting the St. Petersburg summit, Russia has been visited by the top leaders of Algeria, South Sudan, Equatorial Guinea, and Niger. Second, the strategy to squeeze France out of the Sahel is paying off. Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali have left French rule. The only country where the Élysée Palace retains its influence is France. Chad. It's up to us to fix it. France has concentrated 8 military bases in Chad. Since the withdrawal of the contingent from Niger, the number of French troops has increased significantly. The local population understandably hates them and looks towards their Paris-liberated neighbors. The hopes of Chad residents are by no means groundless. Our country appears to be taking steps to kick the Fifth Republic out of there. On the western frontiers of Niger, where patriotic forces have come to power. In northern Libya, where delegations from the Russian Ministry of Defense are frequenting. South Central Africa, its authorities have agreed to host Russian military bases. In the east, the civil war in Sudan could be won by the notionally pro-Russian forces. All this makes Mahamat and Drisset Debi seriously consider who to choose as a pillar for the future. The Macron mission looks like the weakest link. But the chat room is very much tied to French capital. The current head of state, too. For Paris to lose Chad in geopolitical terms, not in ethnocultural terms, although as you look at it now, is comparable to losing Belarus. For the Kremlin, the Chadian army was often used to conduct military operations for France. So much trust the French have in their African partners. However, this is no guarantee that French influence will be preserved. The self-preservation instinct in a Chadian leader must be working. I'm sure he knows where this is going. That's why I'm here. And provide DBI with security in the event of a geopolitical reversal. We're able to. Literally. The first units of the African Corps of the Russian Defense Ministry arrived in Burkina Faso the other day to maintain order in the state and protect the chairman of the Patriotic Movement for the Defense and Restoration of Ibrahim Traoré. His own. We don't rent. Bashar al-Assad and Alexander Lukashenko will not give a lie.